Well, welcome to another Angling Direct Quick Bite, and today I'm going to talk you through probably one of the most effective ways to catch big perch, and probably one of the simplest ways as well, and that is a humble float rig. We all seem to be into our drop shotting, our lure fishing, but let's not forget how effective a simple float rig can be for targeting those big perch. And what I like about this float rig is how versatile it is, the different baits that you can use, and you can use it on just about any type of venue as well. So let's talk about that rig a little bit more in depth. Well, as I mentioned, it's a super simple setup, but that doesn't mean it's any less effective. And on my main line, I've got a Drennan Loafer float, which is held in position with 2 float rubbers. Now, these floats are available in a wide range of sizes to suit the venue that you're fishing. I've got a 4.4 gram on there today, and that suits this river fine. But if you're on a more powerful, deeper river, you might want one of those bigger floats so you can put more weight on to keep your bait down where the fish are. And that's onto a 6-pound main line, and that comes down to a 4 gram Olivette because I've got a 4.4 gram float. And that's simply sitting on top of a little swivel with a buffer bead just to protect the knot on the swivel, and it's held in place with a float stop above the Olivettes. Then attached to that swivel is my hook link. I'm using 5-pound Fluorocarbon today, and I'm using lobworms as bait, and I've got a nice big size 8 hook on there. And then the hardware itself, I've got one of our Advanta twin tip rods, but I've got the straight top section on there, and they're rated at £1.25 pound with a small Shimano Baitrunner, like I said, loaded with some 6-pound line. Now, this rig is really versatile, and what I mean by that, you can fish just about any type of venue with it, with different baits. My 2 favourite baits, the first one has to be a big juicy lobworm. There isn't a perch that can resist a lobworm. And then the other bait, which is really effective for those really big perch, and you either love it or you hate it, are little small live baits. But I will pre-warn you, if you're fishing a venue that's got some pike in it, you might want to swap that Fluorocarbon hook link for a nice fine wire. One that springs to mind is a Zander Pro wire that we sell that comes in 15-pound break and strain. It's nice and soft and supple enough so that the perch grab the bait, but if you do get a pike by accident, you're not going to be getting bitten off and leaving hooks in pike. Now, there are a couple of different ways to fish this rig. There's the standard trotting method, which most of you will know, where you fish it just above the bottom, whether you've got one of those little live baits on or half a lobworm, and you just trot it down the river. And a great tip, like all float fishing, is to feed a bit of red maggot, maybe a bit of chopped worm to entice the perch into the swim. But another way to fish it, which has been really effective for me, is to fish it slightly over depth, especially on those slower paced rivers, and actually lay the worm on the bottom stationary. Quite often when it's really cold, those big perch, they'll just want to creep up, pick a worm up off the bottom, but because you've got that float on there, your bite indication is perfect, and you'll know the minute that they move off with a bait, avoiding those nasty situations where you might deep hook a perch. It's also worth mentioning when it comes to hook choice on this rig, well, that's really dependent on your bait choice. Today I'm using half a lobworm and I've got a size 8 hook on there. If I was using little tiny live baits, I'd probably step that up to a nice big size 4. And a great tip, if you're fishing a venue where you have to use barbless hooks and you're putting lobworms on those barbless hooks, they're quite good at wiggling off the hook. So if you just tip that lobworm with a red maggot, it'll hold the worm on the hook nicely. And the last point I want to talk about is a little bit about location. Now, 90% of the time, this rig for me is my river perch rig. And when it comes to finding perch on the rivers, I found a few different areas that tend to be magnets for those perch. And the best spot by a country mile for me has been if you can find a crease in the river. Now, that might be a big sharp bend. Basically, a crease is where some fast water meets some slack water, and you can trot this float along that crease, and I've caught numbers of nice big perch doing exactly that. Other things to look for is the obvious one is the bait fish. As it gets colder, a lot of little tiny fish will all cram into certain areas. They might be marinas, they might be little dikes, but if you can find those bait fish, there'll definitely be some perch not far behind them. Lastly, cover. There could be overhanging trees, there could be boats moored up, perch like tucking up under the bank to ambush the prey when they come back. So trot on a float close to that overhanging cover is another good spot to catch some perch. So why not this winter? We're coming into prime perch time, and I know we all seem slightly obsessed with the modern lure methods, but maybe if you're fishing a venue that's been heavily lure fished, go back to bait fishing, get yourself some lobworms, and you'll be surprised how effective this is. And I've made it super easy for you in this quick bite. If you want to give this a go, all the products that I've used in this video, we've put links to those products in the description.